This is so great. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming on. This is so cool. Well, what I would love to do is just have you introduce yourself.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about what you do and kind of who you serve and, what you love about what you do.
All right. Well, I am Emily Clark. I am the owner of Designing Intimacy.
Yes.
It is a sexual wellness coaching practice. I'm a board certified clinical sexologist and a certified sex coach. And my passion is helping women, especially, and couples just reclaim and love their sex life.
Yes.
So I offer individual and couple coaching sessions.
Yeah.
And then I also plan to start offering coursework so people can kind of self-guide themselves if coaching doesn't make sense for them.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Tell us, for those who are unfamiliar, can you tell us, how do we define, clinical sexology and what does that mean?
Yeah.
And how does it differ from, other disciplines, in sexual health?
So it's essentially somebody that works with clients and has studied sex and intimacy. And so, a lot of healthcare providers don't know the ins and outs of sex. And they don't have the skill set or the comfort level even discussing it with their clients or patients. And so that's where we come in. So we study everything about sex. So we look at the mental component, the emotional component, physical component, and then also the spiritual, the relationship component. Do you feel connected to your sexuality? How are you connected with your partner? And so we just kind of focus on all the different aspects of sex.
Yeah.
No,
that's amazing. I think you mentioned, it's so many people, or we just don't have the resources to know about sex or how to talk about it, how to communicate about it. And working with someone like yourself sounds like it would be a great fit for someone who's trying to, really get to understand more.
Yeah, exactly.
about themselves, their body, their sexuality, and kind of what they want.
Yeah, but there's in our country, sex ed is so limited.
Yeah.
And so we're raised without much education about just our physical anatomy, much less even about acknowledging that pleasure is involved in sex. Everything that we learn about as kids and up is sex can cause unwanted pregnancies. It can cause STIs. There's no talk of it should be pleasurable.
Yes.
And so, all of a sudden we become adults or married, and then we're supposed to be great at sex and understand everything and love it. But there's no foundation for it.
Yes, I've run into that in my line of work as well. And for you, what got you into this kind of work? What kind of led you into this route?
Well, my evolution with sex and understanding has been so disappointing over my entire life. With my first sexual partner, orgasms were so difficult, and I didn't understand why I wasn't having an orgasm like I saw people in the movies having it. And so it just became this frustrating, didn't understand, I thought I was broken.
Yeah.
And then, into the future a little bit, I was married, and there was no foundation for what good sex should be or what it should look like. And so it became just an obligation. And then it ended up turning into sexless marriage. And after that relationship, I was starting to explore more about sex and understand things and that I deserve pleasure. And once I got to this point where I saw sex as life-giving and so crucial to my mental state and just overall health, I became passionate about helping other people find their sexuality and enjoy it and claim their right to pleasure.
Oh, I love that. And take away the shame.
Exactly.
From it,
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Remove the shame, remove any stigmas.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Intimacy.
It feels countercultural as a woman to say I love sex, because there's so much shame. Oh, you're a slut. You're not a good girl. But no, we all deserve that. And sex can be amazing and should be amazing.
I 100% agree. I think yes, absolutely yes. So what populations or client groups do you particularly lean towards or provide service for?
So for my individual clients, I mainly only see women. I'm really passionate about just helping them reclaim their sexuality and their right to pleasure. And then with couples, I will see any gender with that. But I mean, really any age. Like I am very passionate about working with people, young people who are about to get married and offering premarital courses and people, and elderly people and people in perimenopause and menopause. So just kind of the whole gamut of the female life.
Love that. So you just mentioned menopause. So we're going to dive into a little pelvic health piece there.
Let's do it.
Tell me a little bit about that population and what you've noticed, whether it's, or even like the transitions in a woman's life, whether it's pregnancy, postpartum, menopause, like, what are some things that you've noticed that women struggle with, in those seasons of their life?
So with, postpartum especially, there's so many different changes in their hormones that can just make sex off the table for them completely. It's just not an interest. And then with some of the hormones like estrogen, it can cause dryness. And so just educating people on, these changes, the lack of desire, the dryness, all of this is just biological. Like it is not your fault. And then helping them to just reclaim their personhood, from being a mom. And don't forget about who you were before you became a mom and that you still deserve pleasure. You deserve rest. And just helping them to prioritize that in their life. And I think kind of any transition as you start to enter perimenopause and menopause, there's hormonal changes, there's body changes, especially as we're aging. You may not be able to have the same type of sex that you used to have, when you were a teenager or in your 20s. And part of sexual intelligence is just understanding what your body is capable of, what your biology is doing, and how to still have sex in spite of those challenges and make something even more beautiful.
I love how you just phrased that. I think that's so important. Like, and giving people the tools to understand their body. Truly, because like you said, it's like a foundational knowledge and understanding. And it's like, how can you apply that to different seasons of your life too? Like, because not every season is the same.
Right.
So having that, like you said, that sexual intelligence of knowing, like, it's not always going to look one specific way.
Yeah.
How can we make this pleasurable for the whole lifespan?
Right.
And make it work with you and your partner in the specific season of life. So that's awesome. What are some common myths or misconceptions that you find like some of your clients coming in with or not understanding just about sex in general?
Yeah. So there's kind of this cultural script that we've been fed that spontaneous desire is the only real and true desire, and that's the best sex is when it's just spontaneous. But
Preach.
Yes, a lot of people will have responsive desire, meaning they won't start to feel sexual interest until arousal begins. And so I think just educating people on what is actually normal, and again, that they're not broken. It just makes them feel a lot better in their self.
Definitely. No, I think that's huge. Can you walk us through like the difference between spontaneous desire, responsive desire, and like, what is arousal? When does that come into play?
Yeah. So with spontaneous desire, that is you start to feel sexual desire, at the thought of having sex. And it's just kind of something that, comes into your head. You may be walking and just see something and then, oh, I'm ready for sex. I'm ready to go. Whereas responsive desire, it may be that you're not going to start to get turned on until your partner's touching you and you start to get sensual touch, and then you start to become aroused, and then you want sex. So it's after the arousal process starts. And so what arousal looks like, that is like the quickening of the breath, the flushing, vaginal wetness. For a man, it's an erection.
So it's like the physical changes that happen in the body.
That's correct.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So, and differentiating that between like the mind and the physical and like knowing how those are related, I think is super important. Like you said, the narrative has always been, if I'm not thinking about sex, I'm not normal.
Yes, exactly. And then a lot of couples think they have like mismatched libido when actually it's just one is spontaneous desire and one is responsive desire. And just that education alone can improve their sex life.
Yeah. And then learn to speak that person's language, in a way that meets them where they are, makes for great ability to then communicate, about what you want and how you want things to happen. So that's huge. I think the mismatches in desire, definitely play a huge role
Mm-hmm.
in arousal.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's where, as a pelvic health physical therapist, I see, people, that mismatched understanding of like, what are these physical changes that are happening in
Yeah.
my body?
Yeah.
What should, be happening? And when it's not happening, why is it not happening?
Yes. Yes.
The book, I know you and I have both read it, Come As You Are.
Mm-hmm.
By Emily.
Love it.
Love that book so much. Yeah, it's such a good book. She talks about like accelerators and brakes,
Yeah.
as it pertains to kind of the sexual response cycle, particularly for a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk us through kind of what each of those means and kind of how that plays a role in sex?
So every person has a dual control model of sexual function. It is two different systems that operate together. One is the sexual accelerators and one is the brakes. So the sexual accelerators are anything that start to get you turned on and in the mood. That can look like, physical touch first, a romantic setting, looking at visual stimuli, listening to erotica, whatever works for you. Everybody's completely different. And sexual breaks, that's anything that kind of like turns you off and makes you not interested in sex. So that can be a mental state if you're really stressed. It can be distractions, lack of sleep, an unkept room. So again, so many things. Everybody's going to be completely different with what works for them.
Yep, absolutely. And what would you say to someone who is struggling with their relationship or with their intimacy and kind of wanting to improve? Where should they focus their efforts in identifying, like, kind of maybe which one or both, like, kind of in what order would you address that with somebody?
So what do you mean, what order?
Like accelerators versus brakes.
Yeah.
At what point do we focus more on the brakes first? Do we focus more on accelerators first?
So
what
having sensitive sexual breaks is the biggest contributor to sexual dysfunction. So those definitely play a bigger part than the accelerators do for a lot of people. Not for everybody. And so with my clients, what I have them do is think about amazing sexual situations that they've had and even sexual fantasies, and think about, okay, what worked for me in this situation? What turned me on? What made me into this playful, like fun, free self? And then think of other situations that, didn't want to have sex, or it just wasn't a great experience. And then think about all of those things, like, oh, it was too late in the day. I hadn't eaten. I didn't feel connected to my partner. And really thinking of both is what allows you to create the context that allows sex and desire to bloom freely, because you have to think of both.
Right. In order to, like, for the pleasure, right?
Yes.
To be able to happen.
Exactly it. Yeah. It's you have to be intentional to create sex that's worth having.
Yeah, absolutely. Now talk to me about that then, intentionality.
Yeah.
So, like, what does that look like for somebody? Like, what are some, like, maybe top 1 to 3 things that if someone's wanting to be intentional, like with improving their sex life, like, where do they start?
So first thing first is scheduling sex or time for intimacy is so important. People think that scheduling sex, feels, unnatural, or it's not that spontaneous that we used to have when we were younger. But if you think about all those times when you were like dating your person and all the time you spent prepping to go out on a date and getting ready and shaving your legs or whatever it is, there was so much planning involved. And so that's the same type of intentionality then you need to carry over now. So planning time that you have alone with your partner, I think, is crucial. And again, it doesn't have to be sex, but time for you to be intimate together. The next part would probably be, oh gosh, they were in my head.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm glad we can edit this.
That's totally good.
Oh dear.
Yes.
Hold on.
Yes. Intimacy, intentionality. You said planning.
Yeah, I said planning.
Yes. Scheduling.
Yeah,
Giving
scheduling.
people the freedom to schedule.
Yeah. Okay. What was the first question again? What did you ask?
If someone is being intentional or wanting to be intentional about improving their sex life, like, where do they start? So you said scheduling and, like, being intentional about setting aside time.
Yes.
To be with your
Okay.
partner.
And then the second point would be working with your partner to create the context. So again, that's looking at your accelerators and brakes. And it's also looking at your mental landscape. There's certain like mental states that allow you to access your sensuality and sexuality better than, stressed mom mode or something. And so learning how to create internal and external context that makes sense is so crucial. And I guess part of that, ties into scheduling time, because if you're not going to create an ideal, optimal context for sex, scheduling time is kind of pointless because you're not going to want to have sex in that time anyway.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I think the whole, myth about and surrounding scheduling is that it's not as, or particularly I would say even for people who are more spontaneous, in their desire type.
Yeah.
They may struggle, or just in my clinical experience, I've seen struggle a little bit more with trying to set aside a quote schedule time.
Yes.
Because then it's not as sexy, or
right,
it's not
exactly.
as fun, or it's, all that stuff. But then for people like who really do need that set aside time, it's like, I get to do this.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to have anything else on my mind. Like this is my time to explore.
Yes.
Then my needs, my wants.
Yep.
What feels good for both people involved in the encounter, or whoever's involved in the encounter. Like, I think that's a big, like you had said before, like a myth of just like, we need to normalize this.
Yes. And another, I think, important aspect for somebody who's wanting to kind of enhance their intimacy is just allowing yourself to experience pleasure, not just in the bedroom, but outside of the bedroom.
Oh, I love that.
In our culture, there's almost like this like pleasure anxiety. Like if I'm not doing something, and if I'm not being productive, like I don't have time for pleasure, like it's all just work, or mom, or, family stuff. And you're oftentimes putting yourself last.
Yes.
And so starting to notice what brings you pleasure throughout the day and starting to savor things, it'll allow you to have more freedom to do that in the bedroom as well. So it's almost like a whole life practice, not just for sex.
Right. Like, and understanding, I think that the connection of that, like the brain. Yeah. I tell my patients all the time, your brain is your biggest sex organ.
It is. It is.
Your clitoris is really important, but your brain matters.
Yeah.
And just like you said, identifying where we can find pleasure outside of sexual encounters or physical encounters.
Yeah.
Like, where are we experiencing emotional pleasure? Where are we experiencing, sensational pleasure? Like, what do we see that's beautiful?
Yes.
And so it's like here that we like, and just being like present.
Yes. That's a big thing. I feel like with clients, just being present and not being in your head is so crucial, and being embodied. And it's hard. It's a hard habit, especially if you're not used to that, and we're not trained to be that way.
No.
So
what strategies would you give somebody who's like, or to help them train themselves to be more present, like just in their daily life, like not even necessarily during sex, but just like outside of that? And if we're just going to start somewhere.
Yeah. So something that I really like, it's called Daily Delights.
Ooh.
And so in every single day, just find something in your life that brings you delight. And so it kind of trains your head or your brain to start looking for the positives in things. And so it could be like, oh gosh, the cup of coffee I had this morning was just splendid. Or on my way home, I saw these beautiful flowers, or I heard this amazing song. And it's a great practice to start with your partner too, just every day, like at the end of the day, like, hey, what was your daily delight today? And that just kind of puts you into a positive mindset every day where you're searching out for beauty and pleasure.
I love that. We got to have more of that in our lives.
Yeah.
Yes. Everybody needs more of that in our lives, particularly when there are so many other stressors. There are so many other, like you said, reasons why you could put yourself last or, on the back burner. It's like, there are seasons of life where, you're caring for other people and you have to do that. And that's a good thing.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that you need to completely deny yourself, you know, and not invest in things that still make you who you are.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like that's the whole point. So in regards to like the societal conversations surrounding sex, and, seeing that evolve a little bit. Like, where have you seen that evolve in like more recent years? Or if you feel like, it has, what do you feel like there, like in terms of a positive trajectory, like where this like type of work is going?
Yeah, I'm really hopeful that sex becomes more of like a pleasure centered activity instead of just this end game. Because I feel like growing up, it was just, first base, second base, third base, home run is, penis and vagina intercourse. And, that was that was the goal, and then once you started having normal intercourse, foreplay and oral sex and all of that is just not as important anymore. And so I love how I'm starting to see more of like a circular menu. And so it's like you can have intercourse and then go to oral and then you can just cuddle, and it's not just this linear thing anymore. So I'm really hopeful for that.
Yes, that's huge. And I would completely agree with that. So in your, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Yeah.
If you had to define sex, what would you say that it is or what it includes?
So for me, sex is energy and it is creativity and it is all day, every day. Like sex to me is not just an act, a physical act. It is the way that I look at my boyfriend in the morning. It is the way that we text each other. It is outside of a partner, it's just the creative life force that I have, the connection that I feel to myself. I feel almost like it's a life-giving energy, and it affects every aspect of my life.
And that's such a much broader definition, right, than
Yes,
what we've been trained
exactly.
that sex is.
Yeah.
Like you said, home run, penis and vagina.
Yes, and I feel, when I see clients, so much of it is sex is just genital intercourse. There's such a focus on only the genitals that the rest of the body is, taken out of the equation completely. And if we can just open people's mindset about what sex is and can be, I mean, there's so much improvement to be had.
Oh my gosh, so much. And yeah, from the knowledge understanding to the pleasurable experience, like again, just outside of genitalia.
Yes.
I'm like, Holly, there's so much that you can experience with somebody that is underneath the umbrella of sex.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's, intercourse equals sex. Like that's always been the narrative. So it's like, no, there's so much more.
And there's studies out there that saying couples that have like an obsession with only genital intercourse, their sex life is not great. Like, and maybe they don't know. But yeah, if we can open people's, ideas about what sex encompasses, it's so beneficial.
Yeah. Does sex include foreplay?
Yes. Yes, it does. Needs to. Definitely.
Tell us about foreplay, what that means, and maybe the different types of foreplay that people can.
Yeah. So for me, like foreplay is anything that, increases your sexual energy. And so again, it's not just physical touching. Foreplay is also verbal and nonverbal. It can be glances, it can be winks, texts that you send people, anything that starts to kind of like get your sexual erotic juices flowing and, stirs energy inside of you. And then obviously there's hands involved. And so, and oral sex as well. So it's everything.
Yeah. So it's like so much more encompassing of both the mental, emotional side of your relationship.
Yes. Yep.
Plus the physical.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's another kind of misconception that I've seen is just like foreplay is strictly physical. It's like, what are the things we're doing before penis and vagina?
Right, exactly. Like, what can I do just to get you wet enough just so that we can get going? And like a lot of, sex for people is just like performance oriented. So like, what can we do to get to the orgasm as quick as possible instead of being pleasure oriented? And that's where we need to teach people is sex should be pleasure focused, not orgasm focused.
Or and goal. Yeah, like you said, goal oriented. Because then either you're not getting there.
Yeah.
Because again, brain's getting in the way.
Yes.
Either you're getting frustrated with yourself or there's something else is going on in the brain.
Yep.
Or on your mind. And so having that like taking the pressure off.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the whole point.
Right.
Is like there should be no pressure here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, sex allows somebody to be their most free, I believe. They don't have inhibitions. They feel good about their body. They're receiving pleasure. They're giving pleasure. There's freedom there.
Yes.
But there's so many blocks for people to access that.
Yes. And I take it that's part of the work that you do.
Correct.
Is like helping people work through whatever blocks
Yes.
are present so that they can be experiencing this whole wealth of pleasure that is available to them. Oh, I love it. That's so good. So good. We need more of Emily's in the world. How will an individual know if they would benefit from working with you?
So if anybody out there feels like there should be more to sex or thinks that there might be more to sex, that's what I'm here for, because there probably is for you. I honestly feel like anybody could benefit from sex coaching, just learning more about themselves and desires and what their sexuality means to them. Anybody
love that
could benefit.
Tell me how, in your experience working with humans in general, and the role that you've seen pain play in their sexual story.
Yeah, so oftentimes, I wouldn't say often, I would say more so than not, women think pain during sex is normal. And if you're continually having sex or any type of encounter that has negative aspects to it, it's going to decrease your desire for that thing. And then it'll get to a point where it's just, you're not even doing it for yourself anymore. It's just an obligation. And so that's why I'm thankful that you're here to help women with those painful things, because again, a lot of doctors and, OBGYNs, they just don't, have the tools or resources to really dig into the problem and help fix it.
Right. They don't have the time.
Correct.
Mean, they genuinely, I believe, our medical providers want to help and want people to have, pleasure, but that's not how our medical model's set up.
Not at all.
So, when you mentioned obligation and it just becoming a chore and becoming something that is just like, not even for you anymore, or not even and even if it's for someone else, like it's just, there's actually literature to support that, people who engage in obligation sex, like your body truly is interpreting that as a trauma.
Yeah.
An internal, trauma. So your brain's going to remember, this was not pleasurable. This was painful.
Correct.
This hurts. And given how our body is designed, your pelvic floor will tense up. It will not allow anything to enter,
Correct.
Over the course of time. And that is what I think has been missed, is again, it's just the education.
Yeah.
It's the understanding of that cycle of how your mind is connected to your body and how your body responds to pain. And even, would you mind touching on like emotional pain, relationship pain, like, things that different types of pain that people experience and how that impacts their sex lives.
Yeah. So it's just, if somebody has, emotional issues with sex and, sex hasn't been about pleasure, or for example, if they're holding on to like shame and guilt because of like religious trauma, for say, that just sex isn't going to be enjoyable because there's these things blocking it. And so you have to find a way to help the client kind of remove themselves and see what sex actually means to them and where their values are, not values or scripts that were handed down to them from other people. And so that's one of the biggest, pieces of work that we'll do for people that are struggling with any type of emotional or mental pain.
That's huge. Like giving people the tools to be able to say, I can overcome this.
Yeah.
I do deserve to.
And giving them permission for it. That's a huge thing, because, a lot of people don't feel like they even have permission to be sexual.
Yeah. We're sexual beings. Every single person like has that innate desire to be connected to somebody. Yeah. And that's normal.
Yes. And the beautiful thing about like physical pain and emotional pain, any of that that's causing like these blockages to enjoy sex. All of that is learned behavior, which means you can learn new behaviors and kind of rewire your brain. Once you start to get, positive experiences out of it again, you'll get your desire back and you won't have those problems anymore. It's just about rewiring everything and getting you back on track.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. I love that. Tell us how designing intimacy came to be. Why did you choose that branding and, how it's become your business?
I really, I love things that are beautiful. And so I am a huge fan of art and music and architecture, even, years ago before I was even into sex stuff. And I was enthralled by it. And, as I was going through my schooling as a clinical sexologist, and reading different books by certain authors, and I came to realize how beautiful and meaningful just sexuality is. And it requires intentionality, like we talked about before. And so it's not about building something, it's about designing it because it's custom for every single person.
Oh, wow. I got chills. Woo, that was
good. It's just a bespoke approach, tailored to every individual. And it's about creating something beautiful.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh. That's truly is beautiful. Truly designing, everybody's so unique.
Yeah.
Like, there's not one of us that is the same. So we all need unique approaches to all these things. Yeah. How, tell me this too. What resources, books, podcasts, websites, do you recommend people check out in the midst if they're kind of seeking out some of this type of information?
So again, like we mentioned, I love Come As You Are. It's a wonderful book. She has kind of a partner book to that came out in the past year or so called Come Together, and it really focuses on couples in long-term partnerships. So I think that's a beautiful book. Podcast wise, I'm a huge fan of Sex with Emily. There's a lot of Emilys in the field of sex, but she is a great resource. And she also came out with a great book called Smart Sex. So those are probably my go-tos for a lot of people. For men, I always recommend She Comes First. So it educates them on a woman's biology and how her arousal works. And so it's great education that everybody missed in school.
Truly. Not many men understand or have understood, just given our education system, that we are very different.
Yes.
And how arousal happen. I mean, the same phases, but in different time frames.
Exactly.
And ways, and all those different things. So that's a great recommendation. I second that one. Well, in regards to, again, just like if you had to leave somebody or someone kind of with just like a overall advice, thoughts, if they're trying to understand their body, understand themselves and their sexuality, give them, your recommendation as to kind of how is the best way to begin that journey. And then maybe even like a part of that process, like kind of picture that out for somebody.
I feel like one of the most important things is giving yourself space to explore that. Explore pleasure, explore your sexuality. What that means is looking internally and asking yourself, what does sex mean to me? What is it I want when I want sex with somebody? What is it I want to express? And what is it I want to feel? So if you can start thinking about that, that just adds a layer to the whole experience. It's not just physical. And part of that with creating that space is also masturbating. A lot of women don't. More than half of women have trouble doing that. Again, cultural things that we've been taught growing up. But that's the number one way to reconnect with your sexuality and to know what you like. Because if you don't know what you like and what feels good, how can you expect a partner to know? So it's also the foundation for just satisfying partnered sex.
Yes. Well, like you said, it's understanding your own body.
Yeah.
Like you have to kind of understand your own body to then give direction to someone else also, for what you want to be able to receive. So even like mutual masturbation,
Yes.
I think is a great way.
Yeah, 100%. And then you can watch each other, see what you both like, and it's sexy.
Yeah.
It's so sexy.
Yes. It's like, again, it's not just the intercourse piece, right? There's so many other ways that we can learn about each other and then like have that communication. It's a form of communication.
Yeah, exactly right. And I also recommend to all of my clients is get a mirror and look at your vulva, because most of us have never even looked at it, or we think it's dirty, or we're like scared to look at it. But when you like look at, your vulva and look around and explore and see what feels good, it reduces shame. And then you get, it reconnects you to your sexual self.
Totally. No, I think that's a big deal. And I use that in the clinic with my patients who are open, to that, at certain parts of their journey, particularly the ones who either have vaginismus or, who are unable to engage in penetrative activities because of pelvic floor muscle dysfunction. And so the mirror is huge.
Yeah,
it helps so much. Because in coming from the understanding too, if there's a lot of shame or if there's a lot of fear, surrounding sexual touch or intimacy, it's just like, this is your body.
Yeah.
Like, it's beautiful. Your vulva is unique to you. Like, and you get to know, you deserve to know exactly what your anatomy is and how it works.
Exactly. I know. And I am 39. I looked at mine for the very first time last year. It was the first time I've done it.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I waited this long to do this.
It's so fascinating. And and again, it's just empowering, because it's just like, man, like I have a really strong understanding of my body, how things work. And there's no reason to have any shame, surrounding those aspects of ourselves, which is huge. Well, tell us, where can people find you? How do they get in contact with you? And be able to work with you?
Yeah. So you can find me just designingintimacy.com. All the information about what I do and who I work with is on there. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram handle is designing_intimacy. So follow me on there as well.
Amazing. Yay. Is there any other final thoughts that you'd like to share just surrounding what you do, who you work with, anything that we've discussed that you'd like to end with today?
I just, want everybody listening to understand that sex can be so beautiful and so life-giving and can really impact your entire life. And if you're thinking that there's more, let's find more, because it's there.
Preach. I love it. Well, Emily, thank you so much for coming and talking about all of these things. They're so important. And I'm very grateful that we have a local here in Greenville, South Carolina, that, anybody can come and work with, working through all these different pieces. So anyways, thanks again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.